Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's recording automatically. Welcome, welcome. We've got a nice group in here. We'll start in just a minute, give everyone a couple minutes to join. And there should be a nice Q&A function, I think, for comments and chat, which we can monitor throughout if you guys have any questions or thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on a Thursday night when you could be out there shopping or doing fun things.
That's a good turnout with, I think 18, 20 of you guys. So nice.
That's great. Amazing.
Beautiful. That should be sharing my screen now. I think you guys can hopefully all see that. And we've got lots to get through, so we might just go ahead and jump in. So yes, welcome to a free webinar talking about becoming a registered behavior support practitioner. Tracy and I are going to try to convince you why this is such a great field to go into and all of those things. So we love doing this every year. Before we get started, I do want to start with respectfully acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, which is here in Melbourne where I'm at, and I'm going to let you pronounce it, Tracy, just so I get it correct.
The Wangarabbara people of the Bungalung Nation is where I'm at, which is the Gold Coast hinterland.
Beautiful. And we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of the land that we are presenting from today. We're assuming everyone is from all over Australia, though, as well. So we do pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to the First Nations people here with us today. So, like I said, we've got lots to get through. So our agenda tonight is we're going to start with a brief introduction, tell you who we are, go through a brief summary of what positive behavior support is and why we think you should consider PBS. Try to decode a couple of the acronyms and registrations and all the jargon that exists out there. And then focus on what that NDIS PBS registration looks like. And then some kind of free career advice from us on how to prepare for the role and considerations when you are looking for a company to work for. So you can take or leave what you want from that, but that's our agenda to get through in the next hour. So I'm Rachel. I'm a BCBA and CBA and a behavior support practitioner. And I'm the Director of Clinical Services here in Victoria and also for Tasmania and Western Australia. And here with the lovely Tracy.
Take my mic off, Hi, everyone. Tracy Lawson. I'm also a behavior support practitioner myself and, co-founder and managing partner of Chameleon Group. And super excited to be here because this is our most reinforcing time of the whole year. On this presentation. It's super cool.
We love it. And we both also teach in the Monash ABA program. So you might recognize our faces or our voices from that a little bit as well. Which again, we just find all of these things reinforcing interacting with the future practitioners and clinicians. I'm going to see if technology's on my side and start a poll for us here, because I'd love to know what's brought everyone to today's webinar and what their background is. This will help us know what to kind of focus on and which parts might not be as interesting for you. So if you don't mind just clicking those answers, that would be great. Just telling us, if you're currently studying ABA, if you've recently graduated, maybe you've been working in ABA for a while, maybe you have a psych background or something else. We would love to hear. Let's see. Beautiful. Looks like we've got about 67% of people here are currently studying ABA. Oh, dropped to about 55 now, more answers we get. Other people have recently graduated ABA and others are working in the early intervention or other ABA settings. So that's a good mix that everyone understands the ABA world a little bit to that degree. Yeah, ended up looks like 62% are currently studying. So perfect. You guys are getting a good good head start on things. Beautiful. All right. So, especially for the current students, we're going to draw a little sales pitch on what is PBS and why we think it's so great and why we've chosen to go into this field with our ABA backgrounds ourselves. So first, wanting to share the definition on positive behavior support or PBS from the NDIS PBS capability framework itself. So I've highlighted kind of the important bits there around positive behavior support is the term to describe the integration of contemporary ideology with the clinical framework of applied behavior analysis, or ABA. I know often there's kind of this like ABA versus PBS. What are different things? Really, PBS is one of the applications of the science of ABA and what that looks like, which is a strong foundation for everyone here, it seems like. I always find it reinforcing as well that the definition actually is listed there by the NTIS. Sometimes I know it's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of it all, but that is their definition. Which leads me to PBS being an exciting application of ABA. So you've learned through your studies, through different things that way, what the science of behavior is, the science of learning, all those fun things of reinforcement and prompting and teaching skills. And PBS, I think, is such an exciting application of that and what that looks like. I think there are some myths out there that all PBS is writing long BSPs, and you can probably find a company to work for that is a main part of the role. And it is an important piece of it, but it's also so much more than that. We get to actually work on socially significant outcomes where the focus is improving the quality of the life of the participant that we're supporting. And we actually get to work in the environment. We get to meet people where they are, rather than being in a clinic and having a huge response effort for people to come and access therapies or things like that. We actually get to address, what are those concerns in the environment? How can we make this an enabling environment and a place where people want to be? Which again is, sorry. Yeah.
And it's so much a stronger application, isn't it, Rachel? Because you are, where those within those problem contexts, whatever that is for the person, whether it's, at home, like in a, or if you've got an adult in a SIL, a supported accommodation, like community, whatever that looks like, then you're there, and it is the absolute, without a doubt, best job in the whole world. It is just the most amazing thing. It's such a privilege to be with people and, hearing their story and going on that journey with them, knowing that, you can work together and have a positive impact and increase someone's quality of life. It is just the best. It's just so amazing. And behavioral science, you've got such a great foundation for it. It's just brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's the coolest application of it. And I've personally, I've worked obviously in the US, who does things a lot differently. And then I've done early intervention in different spaces here as well, as a lot of people have on this journey. And I think PBS is where a lot of the magic actually happens. We actually get to address those actual barriers, in the environment and how people are being supported and what that looks like. So really can't, speak enough on the honor that it is to get to meet people where they're actually at. Next as well is we're going to go through those types of registration. So especially since a lot of members here have that ABA background, kind of talk how BCBA/CBAs overlap with the behavior support practitioner role. So those are the three pathways I'm going to speak to. I'm going to speak briefly to the BCBA. I know some people are still working towards that. We know we have that deadline of how long we get to do that here in Australia. Chat through what the ABAA memberships are, and then we'll focus on the NDIS registration process to become a behavior support practitioner. So the first sad news is the BCBA leaving Australia, which I think is heartbreaking to a lot of people. So I think if you are working towards that, you might be looking for concentrated fieldwork and experiences like that. But I believe as of January 1st, 2027, which is like 18 months from now, barely, that will no longer be a pathway forward for people, which is sad, but that's the decisions that have been made. So to become a BCBA, as many of you might know, you have to get a degree from a recognized program. So here in Australia, that's Griffith University in Monash. And then you have to do supervised field work. So it has to be both of those things. And it has those hours requirements, the 2,000 hours now that have to be done monthly, which is a certain amount of hours to supervision ratios. And then once you have all of those hours and that master's, you can apply to sit for the board exam. You have to pass that board exam, and then you're a BCBA, and you have to continue to do continuing education things in that way. So it's essentially that on the screen. What I do want to highlight here is what the activities are around unrestricted activity. So what is the work of a BCBA that you're learning while you're getting that supervised field work? And almost all of this, I think, can be used in the PBS context. if not all of it. You're doing observations and data collection, you're training staff and caregivers, you're conducting assessments, you're meeting with clients about the programming, you're conducting assessments, including those functional assessments, you're graphing and analyzing, you're looking at the empirical evidence, and you're writing those plans and programs. It's a pretty good task list of the PBS process as well. So sometimes people are like, can I get fieldwork hours doing PBS? Absolutely. A lot of the role would be this unrestricted activity space, which again is to my main point. If you take away anything, your BCBA or your ABA training has prepared you well to be a PBS practitioner. Anything to add on that part, Tracy?
No, I think as you said, it is the perfect way to apply your behavioral skills, science skills that you've learned about, and now it's just about being able to apply that in a real setting, and PBS provides that within that human rights framework. So I think that is that important piece about PBS, that it is about increasing someone's quality of life, not about reducing distressing behaviours. It's about looking at that problem context. So it's a great way to apply your skills.
Yeah. Which connects quite well to the certified behavior analyst. So I know there's so many acronyms, I'm trying to decode them all, but I do still find myself using them. There is ABAA up there, which is, I believe, the Association for Behavior Analysis Australia, but I could mix up the association, and Australia A is, I'm not always great with that. Their master's level, so similar to the BCBA level, is a certified behavior analyst, or CBA. So you can see the criteria is either one of two pathways. The first is either meet the BCBA pathway and live in Australia, live and work in Australia, or the second one, which is what a lot of people will be working towards now if you are an ABA student, which is that degree and behavior analytic coursework. So again, that Monash or Griffith Masters, and then the 1,500 hours of supervised experience. So again, quite similar to what that looks like, and then certification. I believe in the future they're working towards a board exam, but I don't have any more information on when or what that looks like. So maybe get in quick before that happens, but
exactly. Now's your opportunity if you're going to jump in before they do have the exam, because the BCBA exam is of course 4 hours long. So since there's no exam to be a CBA, then if you can get your hours done, we would encourage you to do that and get your credential.
Yep, it's an exciting thing to work for and be celebrated. Next is they have something called a professional member. Sometimes I think this can almost be kind of like that provisional space if maybe you are working towards a CBA, but I also think it could apply to people who maybe have an undergrad in psychology or another allied health field, but are working in the PBS space, is something else to consider. So you can look there at the requirements are a bachelor's degree. It says any discipline. And then 1,000 hours of behavior analytic fieldwork. This doesn't have to be, the supervision component isn't documented as much. You pretty much have one sign off that you've done 1,000 hours of work. I think when I've calculated in the past, that's about a year of work, of casework and such that looks like. And again, if you look at this criteria, it looks quite similar to that BCBA task list component, and is PBS essentially conducting FBAs, developing behavior support plans, monitoring progression, training stakeholders, and working directly with clients in that program development. So all of these hours, you could do 1,000 hours of PBS client work, and that would meet that criteria for that 1,000 hours with someone signing you off. So that's another option for, I think there's some comments and such from people on different backgrounds. That's something that you can consider. Again, outlined here what the competency list is for behavior analytic experience from the ABAA side of things. Again, you can look at all of that on there. It's PBS. You're conducting assessments, you're developing plans, you're working with people, you're training people, which is, I think the most exciting application of how that can be used. Next is what the PBS capability standards are. So similar to kind of what those task lists look like from ABAA or the BACB around what are the things that you need to know to learn the role, what are the capabilities, what are the responsibilities. NDIS has outlined what a behavior support practitioner needs to be across as well. They've divided this into 7 domains. which you can see here, starts with an interim response, moves to an FBA or a functional assessment, planning, implementation, knowing it works, or data collection and analysis, reducing and eliminating restrictive practices, and that continuing professional development and supervision. What I like to do is, this is always one of my favorite tables to review, is talk about how the three of these things overlap. So I've convinced you and told you what do you have to know to be a BCBA or CPA? What do you have to know to be a behavior support practitioner? And seeing how in a lot of domains, they're one and the same. So the first column there is the PBS capability framework. The second one is the BCBA task list. And the third row is the ABAA competency list. So you can see everyone agrees you need to know how to do functional assessment. You need to understand why behaviors are happening, be able to use a different range of assessment tools. You need to be able to plan procedures, implementing what that looks like and things around that, and just other philosophical underpinnings and things along those lines. I might try to make an infographic that we can maybe share afterwards around what this table looks like, because I actually think this is one of the cooler bits of it. What I also had a look at was what I think you can notice is row 1, interim response, and 6 around reducing and eliminating response restrictive practices are kind of the gaps that maybe your ABA training hasn't prepared you for the role as far as just straight coursework goes. But what I think is interesting is what helps fill that is some of the ethics that you've learned. The ABA Code of Ethics is similar to the BACB, so I didn't do a second column. It's also the way the ethics code is kind of dot pointed. It's a little bit harder to reference on a table at this high of level, but they're quite similar in some of those areas. So you can see an interim response. We have ethical obligations to minimize the risk of behavior change interventions, which talks about using the least restrictive option and minimizing the side effects of that. And similar to that, reducing and eliminating restrictive practices, we have to conform to legal and professional requirements, and we have responsibility to clients around what that least restrictive intervention looks like,
and
which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, and there's always some good introductory training on sites like the NDIS Commission. You know, they have some training and some like videos and stuff about that, some recording of previous meetings around restrictive practices that are worth taking a look at if you're interested in that. And also companies like NDS, they also have some introductory kind of information about restrictive practices, but you can go to the Commission's website, the NDS Commission, to get lots of things to download and explain what it all is and how it all works if that's something that you're thinking about.
So many resources out there, and I also think it's never a kind of one and done education thing. It's not one video. You're going to come up against questions, and that's where the key of supervision and support comes from, which we'll kind of talk about in a little bit when you think around providers. But I've been doing this for a good amount of years, and there's still times I call colleagues or Tracy, and I'm like, what do I do in this situation? Is it restrictive? Is it the least restrictive? How does that classify?
It's a world of grey, isn't it, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely.
working in PBS, because you can just kind of walk into lots of different kind of contexts and lots of different things occurring, which makes it super exciting. You know what I mean? Like, it really does stretch your skills. Like, you're always learning different things and new ways to apply your skills in this space, which is really, really cool. But yeah, like it's a never-ending journey, and restrictive practices, anything like that, it's a bit like kind of ethical dilemmas. There's more grey and there's more responses of it depends more than anything else. But you just need to make sure that you've got some good supervision and some good support structure around you in these roles.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice that'll set you up for success. Lovely. So now probably the meat of why you guys are all here around how do you actually navigate this. NDIS gets a lot of criticism for things, and one of the things that's probably is fair is their websites are sometimes hard to navigate, and information is not always easily available or understandable or accessible. So we're going to tell you what it looks like today, the answers and information we have. It is an ever-evolving thing, so that's why we do this webinar every year. Because things can become outdated, but this is how things are currently working here in 2025. Again, I'm going to start with some language because it gets a little bit complicated. And this is actually one of the most helpful visuals I got years ago that was like kind of a light bulb of like, oh, that's what people are actually talking about when they talk about this. So where you see the word provider on the screen, that essentially means company, like you're registered as a business in a company to provide certain things within the NDIS. There's a whole world of advice that people need in that space, but that's not what we're here for tonight. But just think of that as the business. There's two types of businesses or providers. There's ones who are implementing providers. So most often this is support workers. This might be supported independent living. This might be day programs. This might just be people helping with community access and what this looks like. But these are the businesses who are implementing the behavior support plan. They're providing that one-to-one support amongst those things. The other kind of company or provider is a specialist behavior support provider. So this company is a company that has behavior support practitioners. So you can see under that is where behavior support practitioners sit. So that's where we're just going to talk about how you get that registration. Within the NDIS, practitioners can't work independently from a provider. So you have to work for a registered behavior support provider. This is done for very good reason, in my mind. We are managing a lot of risk, a lot of gray area, a lot of big human rights things. You need to have a company that has structure above you and answers to those things. You might be asking there, being like, but I've seen sole traders. There's one of two ways this does look. They might be registered as both, where they're the company and the practitioner, or there are contracting arrangements for that. But I think this breakdown is kind of important to be across in that way. Any thoughts there, Tracy?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most confusing things. And I think, as you pointed out, Rachel, because they use the same language, they use the registered behaviour support practitioner and registered provider. And then some people, was speaking to someone today who actually thought they were a registered provider because they had a registered behaviour support practitioner number. I'm like, no, that's just like saying that you can go and work for a company that holds that registration for behaviour support. So it's just, typical government department. They use very similar terms to describe very different things that just make us all confused. But it is really important to understand, the difference that as a behaviour support practitioner, you go through a process to register, which Rachel's going to share with you in a moment, and then you have to sit underneath the umbrella of a specialist behaviour support provider that has NDIS registration as a company. So yeah, it's important to remember.
And I think it should empower you, especially if you're new on the journey, that those providers to be registered have agreed to certain responsibilities and things. They owe you the structure, the supervision, the support. That's not you asking for favors or things. There's responsibilities that sit in that registration bucket that they owe to you as part of that registration and things in that way as well, which we'll talk through some green and red flags around what we've seen in the industry with that. But want to reassure you, that's why this is set up this way. Other allied health doesn't necessarily have these same obligations with funding and things, but you have to work for a registered provider is the long and short of it. Then within that practitioner space, so the individual registered people are 4 different types. One is starting out at the core practitioner, which is mostly where you're working towards through the entry-level pathways. Core practitioners have to be supervised by a proficient practitioner. And then you move to proficient, which is kind of the tick box that you've met everything. And then you can go into 2 categories from there, which is advanced or specialist. Specialist is kind of your niche within behavior support. So a lot of the things that you have to demonstrate in that space is some research experience or things that can be working with a certain population, a certain behavior, things like that. And advanced is a little bit more working on like the policy or system level things. So maybe you are a leader at a company or different things in that way. What I think is quite interesting in this space is the NDIS does not determine which level you're at. All they determine is if you're suitable. So they're not saying you're a suitable proficient practitioner. They've just said you're suitable. Here's your practitioner number. It's up to you and your supervisor's responsibility with that. So you see a wide variety, I think, across the field on what these terms mean because of that. So you might see a lot of people who are claiming to be advanced practitioners, but really that term doesn't actually mean anything. You don't get paid higher as advanced over proficient. You can't charge more. It doesn't necessarily mean you're a better practitioner in any way in that form. really all the NDIS says is you're suitable or you're not suitable or we need more information. Those are the responses that you get from them. Any thoughts on that bit, Tracy?
No, that is it. And you can see the advanced and specialist, they're on the same level. There's not specialist isn't higher than the advanced or the other way around. It's on the same level. The most difference is that between core and proficient, proficient, you have to be proficient level practitioner to be able to sign off on plans that include regulated restrictive practices. So that's a restrictive practices in place that as a practitioner, you've made that clinical judgment that that's the least restrictive response for this period of time. You've got to be a proficient practitioner to sign off on that. Otherwise, if you're core, you have to ensure you've got a supervisor that's at least a proficient level to be able to sign off on those restrictive practices. So that's just, important to remember.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference between core and proficient. After that, a lot of it, you're looking at other experience and things anyway. And Brendan, I do see your question there, which is great, which is what we're going to get to next on, how you can kind of actually break into this. Because, they kind of make it a chicken and egg situation. If you can't get a job without a number, but it's hard to get a number without a job. So we'll walk you through that. Which leads me quite nicely to what the entry-level pathway is to behavior support. This used to be called the alternative pathway. I think it all used to be self-assessment, but that's not as important now. So we're going to walk through what the entry-level pathway is. This, again, matching that you have to work for a registered provider and you need supervision and support ongoing is done in collaboration with an employer. So this means you go to interviews, you share that I've been studying ABA, I have this passion for the field, I need someone to give me a shot, I want to come in this entry-level pathway. Through that there, you do a quick application, you do a declaration form. I know that's going to be really tiny text on the screen, but the whole point is literally just like, I'm entry level, I agree to learn things. Your employer is going to give you a learning plan, a supervision agreement that's like, here's how we're going to teach you everything you need to know in the next 12 months to be a core practitioner. So it's not an isolation. You're meant to do it in partnership with that registered provider. Again, they have a lot of responsibility in this space. You then essentially practice as a core practitioner under supervision. So you're learning the ropes, learning all of the things, and you're implementing that learning plan, that professional development plan. Then 12 months later, you do the self-assessment pathway, which you put together a portfolio of evidence that's like, I learned the interim response. Here's the interim behavior support plans I wrote. I learned about the domain of restrictive practices because here's the plans I wrote with restrictive practices and how I evaluated this, that you get again over 12 months. You put that together and then you go to your supervisor and they endorse you as that. Usually you used to have to submit this endorsement and NDIS would be like, yep, suitable. Again, I believe they're no longer responding to these reassessments. I think it's just up to you and your supervisor.
They did change that recently. Like Rachel was saying, that used to be able to have to then apply to kind of try and get bumped up, and they have kind of sent notification around saying it's up to your supervisor. So once you're at least a core level, any progression from there forward is up to your supervisor to be able to go through the same process and make sure that there is evidence, a portfolio of evidence to justify that decision clinically, that you do have these skills and the supervisor is ethically responsible to do the right thing and to sign that off if that evidence is there. But the NDS, I think, are too busy now to do that, so they've left it up to the supervisors.
You will see sometimes just online, just to kind of dispel some things as well. Sometimes people go through the self-assessment pathway from the beginning. So maybe they've come from overseas and have a wealth of experience or things like that. It takes a lot longer for the NDIS to approve that as well to get a number, where through entry level, for a while, we were actually seeing like a 4 to 6 week turnaround. So you get the job offer, you wait till you have that number, you start the role. I think during election season, the NDIS slowed down a lot of things anyway. So we saw closer to 8 to 10 weeks, maybe.
I think it's up to about 14 weeks
for
some people at the moment. But like you said, it's election, your government goes a bit crazy. It'll all settle down again and kick back in.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a waiting game there, which is where I would kind of tell you, maybe don't quit your day job till you have your practitioner number and you can start work, because it is a bit of a waiting game. It's not like you interview and you can start next week and wait on that. You might get the job offer, the employment thing that you kind of go through the process to get registered. And then once that comes through, you get to actually start the role and what that looks like.
And I think that is something important just to remember, that whilst you have to really pretty much, show an employment contract with a company to be able to even go through that, initial, entry level pathway, but you can't actually do any work under the NDIS until you get that number through. So you might start with a company, and if they're willing to just provide you some intensive training or something else, but you can't do any client work at all and until you have that practitioner number. So just be aware of that to protect yourself.
Yeah. And probably a good red flag if someone is telling you you can start next week without your number, it's all good. I would probably not choose that place as far as being well above board and with ethics. So if you're here for our kind of unsolicited advice, that's something I would not put at the top of my list. Again, kind of just diving a little bit deeper into what that entry-level pathway looks like. It's some documentation of experience and qualifications. So a resume, copies of your degrees, things like that. A professional development plan. Again, you shouldn't have to do this from scratch. You're entry level. You're not meant to know how this all works. The company you're going for should have a professional development plan for you. They should have an induction plan, some supervision agreements, and tell you how you're going to learn all of these things. It's not up to you to tell someone how to teach you. So again, if that's something someone's making you do, I might already kind of start questioning the level of support they're going to provide you. A supervision agreement, again, that should come from the company, and that declaration form that, again, you tick off. Yep, I'm entry level. I agree to follow this plan. I'm going to learn these things. I understand all that. And then you can add extra evidence as well if you want around those transferable skills. So maybe you've been in the education setting doing PBS and you're now moving to NDIS. Again, for entry level, they're not going to look at this information, really. So
it's interesting, Rachel, because I think the last couple of people that I've supported through this process, and they've had a 12-month supervision agreement, they've come back and asked for us to change the date, even though it clearly said when it started and it stated that it was for 12 months. They wanted us to put the beginning and end date in the same line. Even though it was on the next line, it said that it was for 12 months, which just holds it up. So as soon as you do something like that, and then the NDS Commission ask you a question, you pretty much go back to the bottom of the list. So really try and make sure you've got everything together. Try and make sure that you're supported by the company that you're going to be working for to help you, check that you've got everything in place. But they are getting a little bit finicky lately. So just make sure you tick all the boxes, dot your I's, cross your T's, get someone to double check.
And it's a good test on how your new company that you've signed this lovely contract with is going to support you. Are they ready and available to quickly answer your questions and help you navigate these things? Because like I said, NDIS changes quickly, so we might have it figured out today and we have a new barrier tomorrow. Are they adaptable and able to adjust and help you with that? Again, you're not meant to know everything. So if you're finding that you're really thrown in the deep end after you've been offered this job, maybe ask yourself okay, is this going to continue as I learn this new role? Again, my unsolicited advice with that piece as well. And again, after you go through, you've had 12 months, you've now been in the role, you go through that self-assessment process where you put together that portfolio of evidence. You do a self-assessment. So you look at all the capabilities you're meant to know and you say, do I know this really strongly? Am I developing this capability? Is this something I have no idea what this is? And then your supervisor does the same thing. If they agree that you're on the right track, you don't even have to have fully met everything. You're allowed to have some developing capabilities to move up to proficient in things. Again, you don't have to know everything, but you have a plan to learn it. They endorse that. Again, this doesn't actually have to be sent. The portfolio is never sent to the commission unless they ask for it. And we don't have to send the endorsements anymore, which leads me to some tips around the portfolio of evidence. Really remember that this registration is yours. It's your career registration. Similar to if you go down the CBA or BCBA route, you're doing that with your personal email. That's your personal evidence, your certification. Treat these documents the same way. So don't register with your work email. Don't register with your student email. Register with your information. It's your registration. And portfolio of evidence is helpful to de-identify those documents for confidentiality reasons, but make sure you save that. Because we don't know that 3 years from now, the NDIS isn't going to come back and be like, Tracy, why did you endorse Rachel? And you're like, I don't know where that supervisee even turned up in the world. I don't remember. Those people should have that portfolio to reflect back on in that endorsement form of like, oh, actually, here's what we said. Here was the area that was developing that we needed to work on. And here's what's our plan to do that. Just treat it with that.
And it really is important to use your personal email and, make sure you've got everything in folders. So many times we've had people, I come across people that they've used like a previous work email, and the NDS Commission is not that easy to deal with when you're trying to go in and say, hey, can I just change some detail? They go, yeah, sure, just go in the portal. I'm like, yeah, I tried that. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So do use your personal email address, and do keep everything like Rachel said, this is your evidence of your clinical work. So make sure everything's de-identified and you cover privacy and confidentiality, but it's your work. You need to keep that as evidence in case something happens down the track.
Yeah. And yeah, that's exactly what we think. So there is times that they can audit. So if someone says you're this big, great advanced practitioner, that's probably more likely to raise flags anyway. I think those were, at least a while ago, those were the areas they had more time to ask questions about. Being ready to audit, that protects you and your supervisor. And keep it organized. So it goes through domains and stuff, do folders, things, have a USB that all of these things are on or whatever that looks like. Similar to, you see other professions go through opera registration or things like that, and you have to put together all this information, treat it with that same level of importance. And what that looks like. And then just going to kind of orient you to what that self-assessment tool looks like. So it really breaks down if you've kind of in 3 columns, have you met the capability? So you have evidence that shows yes, I clearly know this knowledge or skill. Am I developing this capability? So maybe it's things with restrictive practices, but maybe actually your client load hasn't actually had that many restrictive practices on it that you've had to navigate, like state authorization, for example. That might be a developing capability where you know it in theory, but you don't have the piece of work to document it yet. That's okay. Or not met. Have you just not been provided that opportunity and training for that area? And that goes through 3 components as well. The core knowledge, which I think is always the harder bit to show evidence for, because how do you prove you know something? The core skills, which matches up to those work outputs. And then what's your evidence for that? So yeah, again, for interim response, the interim behavior support plans is a really good piece of evidence that matches up with those domains in that way.
And I think that this is another place where you're, if you're doing any kind of, if you're doing your master's or something in ABA, you can use that as your core knowledge. You can use some of your subjects that you've studied and just kind of list those subjects under some of those domain areas for your core knowledge, and that would clearly meet that.
And it literally goes through those 7 domains I spoke about. It walks through, this is just the interim response example. It goes through 17 plus items around the knowledge and skills that you're meant to know. And it does that for all 7 domains. It does this for core, and then it repeats it with kind of that advanced level for proficient. In order to be proficient, you have to have met all the capabilities for core, and then you can be developing for some of those for proficient. So it is a huge self-assessment. It's easy to just go but it's pages long.
It is pages and pages. Don't freak out. Yeah. But it is big.
Yeah. Lots of businesses and supervisors have different spreadsheets and things. So you'll see people move it to Excel and different things, because then you also have to tie it to that evidence. So how do I prove that I know I can gather and document appropriate authorization and consents required by law? I have this document. I need to tie it to that capability met, what that looks like. So you fill this out, talk about your evidence, and then we'll go through types of evidence. The supervisor pretty much agrees. Do I agree that they've met these, or does this person say they've met the capability, but they've never even heard of that before? So what does that mismatch look like? Different types of evidence that you can provide, which Tracy was just hinting at, which is really good. One, supervision and peer support. So those one whole domain of the capability framework is supervision and continuing education. So great evidence there is a supervision agreement, supervision notes, those type of things. Some reflective practice and things that you've done in that space as well. ongoing professional development. So yes, your master's in coursework. If you go to some of those restrictive practice trainings we've spoke about, keep a log of what you did with that and where that looks like, and then actual documents as well of those goals and completion. So what does that actually look like? It's handy those behavior support plans. The functional assessment category, your FBA that you first wrote can go there as that evidence. But again, you should have a supervisor who should be able to help you with that. So you should be able to go and be like, I don't know a piece of evidence to go with this part. They should have some ideas to walk through and know where your skills are sitting. You should never be alone throughout this process. And then it's on the supervisor to do the endorsement process. So they look at your evidence, your portfolio that you've put together that's nice and organized and de-identified for them to have. They look at your self-assessment where you've put things as far as like, yep, I know this skill, I'm developing this skill, or I don't know it. And they tick off what they agree and endorse you as. Again, this used to have to be submitted to the commission. They no longer want it. So it's really important to keep this letter when you have it. The supervisor and the company should have it, but you should also have it saved for your personal reasons. If you leave that company and you go to another, it's going to be important that you can also share with your new HR. Oh yeah, like I was core, but now I'm endorsed at Proficient. I can write my own behavior support plans and don't need an additional signature on it.
And I guess another red flag, in this space, Rachel, isn't it, when companies kind of do this a bit too quickly and don't really want to look at your portfolio and don't really take the time to really kind of assess, do you have that core knowledge? Do you have that skill? Like, what is the evidence of that? And if people are kind of, because it benefits the company to kind of rush you through somewhere, just be mindful of that it's not good for you as a practitioner, as a learning clinician. You want to be able to ensure that you have built that so you can protect yourself down the track, but also you want to be able to know that ethically you do have those skills and that is within your scope of practice, because you can show that evidence and you have had a supervisor who's taken the time to walk you through all of that and agree that meets that capability. So if people do it a bit too quick and it's like, oh no, it's fine, let me sign you off, I would be looking for somewhere else to work.
I fully agree. I think if someone's endorsing your form, because it's kind of self-monitored, no one's really checking it unless you get audited. Someone's endorsing you without you doing the self-assessment or building a portfolio. Question if that place is actually helping you grow in the right ways. Again, they owe you things. There's this huge responsibility, huge costs and audits and things that companies have to do, and they owe you. If they're skimping on this, it's not good for you, and it's really not good for the field either. It's a hard, big, important job. We don't want a lot of people out there promising they're advanced practitioners and no one's looked at the work that they've produced. So all of you who've done, especially have gone and gotten masters and have gotten training and you're trained in ethics, see what the people around you are doing as well. And then, like we said, it's never kind of a one and done thing. I'd love to feel like I know everything I ever need to know to do this job. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Never ending. It never ends. There's always something else we don't know.
Always something. And it changes and there's new things and we learn better and we know better and can do better in that space. So you should always kind of have learning plans and things that you're working towards. Even once you are signed off and you're happy and you're a proficient practitioner, you should still have some performance development plans and check-ins to continue growing. Do you want to move down a specialist route and learn about a certain population or presentation that you really want to, kind of be that expert in some way? Supervision should never finish, which I think, like we said, NDIS, ABAA, and the BACB all agree very strongly on that. It's a career-long experience. And continuing professional development. I know the BCBA and ABAA have kind of a higher standard of what that looks like on a yearly or 2-yearly basis. But the NDIS outlines that you are expected to do that as well and document that piece. Any thoughts there, Tracy?
No, it is. It's just really important that I think that because the NDIS is very market driven, there's a big push for some companies who may not be there for the right reasons, to just kind of push people through quickly and tick boxes and offer them, a higher salary than is really reflective of their skills and experience, and give them some fancy title. And I know it's really tempting to do that when you're starting out, but you're really doing yourself a disservice down the track. Like, you're much better off like learning, embedding yourself with really good, skilled, BCBAs or CBAs around you who can shape you and support your behaviours and shape that clinical practice as you move through, and really focus and want to spend that time with you to develop those areas, because there is so much. It is never ending, and there's always some really cool research and some new things that are happening in the field that we just want to kind of learn more about and change our practice and adapt ourselves. And so I would really encourage people to just be mindful of that, as tempting as all that is. Be mindful and try to find good supervision practice and continuing professional development, and that is ongoing. It's not just a one-off thing.
And we'll get to it in a minute around questions to ask when you're considering companies. Ask about these things. Like, yes, pay is important, and have those conversations, but they should, one, love that you've asked these questions, and they should get so excited to tell you around what that looks like. Like, this is the fun part as a supervisor. Like, I would love if someone's like, what's your supervision structure? Let me tell you about what we can do. They should get excited if they're like, oh yeah, like, you'll have a supervisor. Blah, blah, blah. Question it. They should want to teach you. They should want to hold your hand through the entry-level process, which leads us to how to prepare for the role. So again, one thing, probably the biggest gap in training and what's so specific to where you live, so not just Australia, but different states and things, unfortunately it's not fully a national system, is learn about regulated restrictive practices, learn what that authorization is, start to learn some of those gray areas and what that looks like. Again, you can go and start building that portfolio for once you've been in the job 12 months. If I went to this NDS training, or I watched this video on the commission, and I read this flow chart, and what that looks like.
And the regulated part in that just kind of specifies that a behaviour support practitioner is basically agreeing clinically that is the least restrictive option for this person in this moment to keep everyone safe. That's why it's regulated. Unregulated, is that's not the case. A behaviour support practitioner is not signing off on that.
Yep. And can start to learn, all about what that space looks like, what it looks like for family versus registered providers and things like that. There's millions of other webinars at this point on the field. I think it's a great time to come into the field. When PBS was new, the way the structure is currently in the NDIS, maybe 5 years ago now, it wasn't even all that long. Everyone was kind of trying to figure out on their own. Now there's a wealth of information out there for you. Use it. And start doing that. You can also look at like different professional developments and supervisions. As part of working in the NDIS space, you will need different compliance checks. So things like working with children's, your NDIS screening, background checks, depending again what state and things you work on. You can look on if that's something you can do before you have an employer, making sure nothing kind of gets held up in that space. Again, there's so many different professional development trainings and supervisions. If you're not on LinkedIn, I think it's a great place to kind of start looking at that, follow different companies and leaders in the fields. There's abundant opportunities, which is great. And also start getting other experience within the disability space. We've all kind of heard the examples. You don't want to be the BSP that walks in and has never met a person with disability or a care team or understands the stress they're going through. People are going to hate you. Like, the behavior support practitioner work is hard. Support work hard is even harder. If you don't know what these people are kind of managing and dealing and what their roles entail, it's going to be quite hard to come up with strategies for them. So get support work roles. There's lots of cool opportunities with that. Maybe you're working in education, aged care, early intervention. Get your feet wet. Get out there.
Support work is great. It's really good to do support work, and also, if you're still studying your master's or considering doing a master's, then looking at, the RBT kind of pathway and looking at that as well, because those sorts of things kind of get you oriented into that space, and provide some of that, foundation. But as Rachel said, it's no good doing a master's and having that theoretical understanding, then looking straight away for a job as a practitioner, and you've never even been in the room with someone with cerebral palsy, or, you need to orient yourself and understand all those nuances. Even the language around what's okay and what's not okay is constantly changing. Like it's, whatever the socially acceptable terms and concepts and stuff are, we need to kind of be constantly updated and remind ourselves to keep up to date with that. And the best way to do that is to work in that space. And being a support worker, you'll also be around behaviour support plans. You'll have a role of implementing strategies. And so you kind of get to see what other practitioners do, and kind of get a feel for what that job might look like, before even doing it. So it's really good experience.
Yeah. And you also figure out what excites you more than other bits. You might find certain, topic settings, different things, different team structures that excite you a little bit more for the role. And again, there's I think a lot of training kind of really focuses on, even the masters, on early intervention and kind of a clinic-based setting, and being able to translate that and what restrictive practices look like and all of that. And there are lots of trainings out there. We do have a little plug here as well, Tracy, for PBS Together, which is doing some exciting things in that space. I might let you chat to exciting options there.
Yeah, so, we started PBS Together because, we're so passionate about supporting practitioners and having a space and somewhere that is like focused on their learning, not just providing some information and saying good luck. And so the PBS Bootcamp is 8 months. And so you get something like, it was 40 hours, but I think we've extended, it's over 40 hours of online courses. We have a fortnightly live class to discuss, the course that you just did and unpack that more. We have, monthly public supervision sessions. It's quite intensive support, and it goes for 8 months. And it covers all those key areas that you need to understand and know to be able to be a behaviour support practitioner. And of course, being behaviour analysts, we have used, behaviour skills training in regards to how we've put this together. And so you've got all these kind of micro skills that you have to demonstrate. It's not just looking at a PowerPoint and ticking a box. Like, we're really passionate about setting people up for success. We always have free webinars. We've got a YouTube channel. You can go watch all the free webinars if you like. There's workshops available. You can get on the mailing list if it's something you're interested in. But as Rachel said, jump on LinkedIn, because there's some really cool things happening in this space at the moment. There's some good training and good companies that are out there doing similar things. So get oriented and get out there and check it all out. We do have a new boot camp starting on the 12th of September. So just to let everyone know.
And I think it really helps bridge that gap between, what's the theory, and then how does this job actually, what does this actually look like? And hearing so many positive things from that. And the webinars are great. You have to stay up to date on what that looks like, because they're free and you can join, and you get to hear even just the comment sections, I feel, in the webinars are so interesting. You can see what current practitioners are thinking and their challenges and solutions and things like that. So you don't have to kind of wait till you're in the role to start this professional development. There's lots available to you now. Like I said, it's a great time to be entry level. Now, again, kind of our tips and tricks when you're looking for a provider. So again, you're looking for a company, a registered provider to work for. Questions that if I was telling my past self, things I would ask is, what are my billable hour expectations? Are there incentives for meeting this? It's a part of the role. So it's good to know, what are your expectations? Again, good ABA and business practices tell us that expectations being clear is an important part. They should be able to quite easily answer what that looks like. Ask them what quality improvement processes they have in place. So are they just worried about billables, or do they have a way to make sure that my work is getting better over time? What does that look like? Again, that big question that we said we'd come back to. What is your supervision structure? How do you encourage professional development? What does that look like? And what's your training onboarding process, especially as an entry-level practitioner? I think that's a really important question in the interview before you even have that learning plan or you go through the registration process of just, how are you going to teach me this role? What does that look like? Also ask around supervision. If you are trying to become a CBA or BCBA, like I said, the opportunities should be endless for those things to overlap. So some questions you can think about asking there are, one, what's your supervision policy and structure? So what does that look like? How often would I expect to have supervision? If you're entry level, if you're not getting it weekly, especially at the beginning, I would raise a red flag on that. You're dealing with a lot of risk and things that turn around quite quickly. Ask them directly in the interview if they offer BCBA or CBA supervision. If you are trying to work towards the BCBA route, which I know is cutting it quite fine at this point in time, ask them if they have the capacity for concentrated hours. Just because they offer BCBA supervision doesn't mean they can give you that additional hours of supervision and what that looks like. Ask them how they train and support their supervisors. So is this just someone who's fumbled their own way through the job and then they're teaching you? Or do they have support for their supervisors? Ask them how many BCBAs or CBAs are one at their company and how many are supervisors, how many are working towards that registration. I've seen it happen in other people's circumstances where they're so excited, they've gotten somewhere, there's a BCBA supervisor, but there's one in the whole company. And then when that person leaves, you're like, well, I took this job for the supervision to work towards this credential, and that's not an option. It shouldn't be dependent on one person. And I think it's a green flag if there are other BCBAs or ABA trained people there. Your ethics are going to align so much quicker, the way you view behavior and things like that. I think there's a lot of fantastic practitioners out there who aren't ABA trained, but as a BCBA myself, I find that I'm much easier aligned with companies who also have that same mindset and training. Any thoughts or advice there, Tracy?
Yeah, I just think that as Rachel said, I think that we've heard from a few people that we are the supervisors in different spaces, telling that kind of a story that they applied for a company because they did have one BCBA supervisor and they thought it was all great, and then that person moves on and then they don't have anything, and then they've got to make that tough choice of then finding another company again. And I think that it does, if you've done your master's or you're on that trajectory to do that, or you've done some RBT training and that's that sparked your interest, there is a depth of knowledge being a behavior analyst and having supervisors that are behavior analysts compared to PBS supervisors. There's just a different depth to that understanding of what the work is. And so I really encourage people, do your homework. There's some good companies out there, but do your homework and check those things. Check how many BCBAs are there. And of course, the BCBA has a list. You can search all the BCBAs in Australia. You can search. You can check yourself, even if someone says they're a BCBA. Don't believe what people say. Check. Look them up. I don't know about, does CBA have something like that, Rachel, to check? I'm not sure that they do.
Sure if they do. I'm not sure if they
I'm
do.
sure it's on the cards, but but check, do your homework, and see.
Absolutely. And again, companies who have this, it's an important piece of their business, they should be so excited to talk about this. It shouldn't be like, oh, you're one of those ABA people. Yeah, we have someone who can supervise. You should be like, oh my gosh, yes, let me tell you about this group supervision and these training materials, and this is how we support people. And we're so proud of these people. Again, get on LinkedIn. You can see who's recently passing exams and stuff. Like, add strangers on there and just see people in the field. You can see who's celebrating when someone passes that. And I've seen I feel like the closer the BCBA comes to leaving, I've seen even more and more red flags in this space, I think, as people get desperate. So make sure you kind of protect yourself in that. I've seen even you're working for a company, but you have to pay them for this supervision, but they owe you supervision anyway. Don't fall into traps like that. Companies owe you these learning experiences and this support, and they should be so excited that you're wanting to go down a similar pathway to them.
And you do have to, if you want to go down that BCBA or CBA track, you do have to do more than likely a lot more supervision than generally a PBS company might provide, to make sure that you meet that criteria, and to count your experience hours. So ask all those questions like, are they going to give you all of those hours in supervision so then you can, use your, the maximum amount of experience hours you can to get your certification. So, put them through the ringer a bit. We love it when people ask those questions. They're so great. We get so excited.
Yeah.
And so they should too. They should be excited to hear those questions.
Absolutely. As well, I think ABA students are like, your training has prepared you so well for this role, and the industry knows that. So they should be so excited that you're interested in their company, and they should be so excited to support you to move through and learn these things. Don't let them kind of just use you as a cash cow and you're stuck in a place where the ethics don't align. Follow where people's excitement and passion are in that space. There's a lot of good work happening out there. Which also is some important hard-hitting questions that I would love if someone asked me this in an interview. So one is, what is your company's view on applied behavior analysis? Again, I started the presentation saying PBS by the NJS standard is an application of applied behavior analysis. But we know there's lots of different opinions and things out there. If you have someone who's like, oh, no, we don't like that stuff, or we don't use that, it's kind of like, well, then how are they actually addressing behaviors if they don't understand how behavior and how the environment impacts that? And you're going to burn out so quick if you're trying to fight these good ethical battles and the company doesn't care about your ethics code because they started this PBS company because they saw there was money in it.
And there's a huge difference between applied behavior analysis and abusive behavior, which, we all are aware that unfortunately some people have experienced abuse, in that space, and it's been tagged as applied behavior analysis. It's not. That's not applied behavior analysis, and unfortunately, that is some people's experience, and I absolutely acknowledge that is real for people. But you do want to be able to work in a place that's congruent with your values, and it's going to be difficult. You don't want to be in a space where you're having to, justify yourself about, your behavior analytic framework. That will exhaust you, as Rachel said. It's not a healthy kind of space to be in.
And similar, ask them how they handle ethical decisions. If they try to tell you that ethical decisions never happen, they are lying or they are doing ethics very wrong. The job, like Tracy said, with restrictive practices, especially, you're in the gray area. You're in there with people and their messy lives and tricky situations. Their quick answer to that is supervision, and that supervision structure that they should be so excited to tell you about. It shouldn't be like, oh, no, that doesn't happen here. It does. There should be ethical decisions to be made. I do see at 7, so we actually did a little bit okay getting there right at 7:01 through that. We'll stay on for a minute if people want to add in questions or things. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Like Tracy and I said, this is one of our favorite webinars to do each year, and it's so nice to see how many people are still coming. Exciting that people are excited about the field and the opportunities that are presented there. Reach out at us on LinkedIn and things, and check out websites and just see what's happening there. We love connecting with potentially new practitioners. And we're happy to give our free career advice if you're asking.
Yeah, but it is the best career in the world. It's a really great job. You just need to make sure that you do a bit of homework and you think about where you want to work. Go for a few different interviews in a few different places. Think about what is congruent with your values. What are you looking for? Think about some of those questions that we've encouraged you to ask potential employers, and kind of set yourself up for success, as we would want to set up, people that we work with for success. It's the same. You can turn your mic on, guys, if you want to ask some questions. I've tried to answer a few questions in there. So Laura, just started my master's. Would you recommend continuing the CBA route, or would you recommend applying for PBS entry-level roles? Is there more opportunities in the PBS space in Australia? I think there's definitely more opportunities in PBS in Australia, because that's what's funded. Applied behavior analysis as such isn't kind of a funding line within the NDIS, and so then you'd be, but doesn't mean you you can't do both. You should be very easily, Laura, be able to do both of those things, like continuing your CBA route in regards to getting your experience hours and doing all those things whilst you're employed as a entry-level PBS practitioner. You should be able to, do both of those things concurrently. You just need to be able to work for a company that has got PBS registration rather than just going to like an early childhood kind of registered kind of company. So that's kind of the difference. At the moment, just important to note and share with everyone, we're seeing more and more little people get behaviour support specifically in their plans rather than early childhood. So I think that you would be wise to kind of, do both. Look at that CBA pathway and also look at PBS practitioner. And then you've got some choice and scope in your career as well in regards to which way you go. Do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. That was my gut reaction was both. I think, having the CBA, and if that's what you're working towards, I think that's great. I don't think the PBS is in competition with that. If anything, I think it could complement it quite nicely. It just depends on, if you're happy in your setting and maybe you are in like an early intervention setting and you have supervision. If you're happy there for a bit longer, you can do that. The PBS space isn't going anywhere. As Tracy said, if anything, I think it's expanding more and more across, especially those young people spaces. We are seeing the little 4-year-olds and things getting behavior support, where years ago that was not the case. So I hope we've inspired you to consider PBS one day. I think you can definitely do both.
And so I just want to make this, because there's a few questions that I've tried to answer it probably not very well. So to do PBS as a role, like to apply to have a practitioner number under the NDIS, you need to be employed by a company in Australia that is registered under the NDIS for behaviour support. That needs to happen before you can then get a practitioner number. And so that's what has to happen. You can't get a practitioner number if you're not living and working in Australia, and you need to be able to be employed, even part-time or whatever, but employed, under the employment of a registered PBS company in Australia. So I hope that's clear.
Yeah, the company part is, I think, the important bit. It ties to the supervision and the risks and how they need to partner that way. Just another question around.
You can turn your mic on, guys. It's probably easier to turn your mic on and ask.
I can't tell if I need to change the settings for them. I'm trying to see if I can't tell what the little sign means for them.
I don't know.
I can say allow mic. If you want to raise your hand, I can hit allow mic. I might not go through all 26 people. If you want to raise your hand or anything, it looks like I can unmute you.
So Brendan, it's really hard to get a number. It depends where you live. To get a number, do you mean a PBS practitioner number?
A lot of it really is looking for that registered provider. If anything, there might be strength in areas where there's not a lot of companies. It's so hard to reach some of the more regional, remote places.
For sure.
A lot of places are, so maybe start asking if they support people through the entry-level pathway. Because they shouldn't expect you to have a number if they're supporting you through that pathway.
Yeah, and I think that the problem is, and I think that you said this a bit earlier, commented on this earlier too, Brendan, is most companies want you already to have like a number, so which would mean that you've worked somewhere else under another, registered provider to get that number, because it's just, a bit easy for the company. But I think that I think two things. One, good companies will always, have some, like, at Chameleon, we would call them level ones, those entry level PBS practitioners, because, we want to, shape that up and develop those clinical skills for people and provide those opportunities. But there's also, you don't want to be with a company that has a lot of, entry-level practitioners, because you won't get the support and the training and the coaching that you need to be able to do the job well. So try and look around and ask those questions. If you can find a company that is willing to take on like an entry level practitioner, then ask, what support will you get? Like, is there, a graduated level of you doing your client hours? Like things like that to then, kind of scope out, are you going to get real support, or are they going to tell you you're an entry level, not pay you that much, but then have these high expectations in regards to what you're expected to do, which is totally not okay. So just test everything out and ask some questions. It is tricky. It's a very competitive market. And I think that some of the things that we were talking about earlier that Rachel mentioned about, getting work as a disability support worker, doing some, work as an RBT or something, if that is an option, like get yourself in that space. Even, some early childhood work or in a little kindy or something, like think about what are options you can do to orient yourself to gain some of those skills to then give you a better chance of a company taking you up as an entry-level PBS practitioner. So just, think about the things that you can do.
And I also think not every job's going to be for entry level. So if they are telling you that they want experienced ones, that could be one of two things. One, maybe they don't have a good system to support entry level. That's not where you want to be anyway. Like, I know it's hard. You want a job in the experience, but also people telling you no is the right answer in that space. And two, sometimes companies have more capacity to take on entry level. They should be dedicating time to train you, and it does take longer to train and support someone entry level. So maybe it's just keeping an eye, if you find a company you really like, reaching out, telling them you're interested, and to keep you in mind when they have an entry level position available.
Absolutely. And as Rachel said, use LinkedIn, connect with people, and try and just build up your networks as you kind of try and enter this space. It can be competitive, but there are good companies out there. There are companies that will take on entry-level practitioners, but really try and set yourself up in a situation where you've got a good chance of someone saying, hey, you look really dedicated and really passionate about this. I'm going to give you a go. So there are definitely companies out there that do it. Do your homework, check out LinkedIn, look around at people's profiles and ask some questions, and even comment on things on LinkedIn. Be visible. Because we always take notice of people that are visible on LinkedIn and say really cool things and have really cool comments, because most companies want people that are passionate, want people that are really passionate about the work and the role, and can think critically about situations and are assertive enough to make a comment. So, think about those things too.
Yeah, and just I just wouldn't get discouraged if they're saying they need someone with experience and it's a big contract role. That's not your first job, then, and that's okay. It's better to find out before you apply for the job than 6 months in. But I know this is disheartening.
There is companies, unfortunately, because there's companies, unfortunately, that don't really care enough about the work and don't care enough about the people they employ, and they will take on contractors and say, oh yeah, you can be a PBS contractor. Please don't do that when you start out. Please find a company that will provide you that coaching and support, the resources and things that you need to learn the job well. There's a lot of facets to the role, and your behavioural science training will be amazing foundation, but there is still a lot to learn. So please, don't get tempted to get a contract role. I think Lauren has a hand up.
Perfect. I think I can allow your mic, Lauren.
Hi, girls. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Perfect.
Perfect. I'm a primary school teacher and I'm doing my master's in applied behavioural analysis. So I was just wondering, with me in a pathway, am I able to do my CBA? Like, how would it work?
Yeah, so in your current setting or in the PBS setting?
In the future setting. So at the moment I'm doing I'm the disability inclusion leader at my school.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm just doing this as well to sort of add to it. So with this, because I know in the education department, I don't know who would support me to get my CBA. So how would that work?
Right.
Yeah, you would probably have to pay for external supervision
Okay.
by BCBA, CBA supervisor to have that supervision, and then they would be able to work with you and work out what you can count. You'd be able to count a lot of things that you're doing within that within your work environment as experience hours. You know, your supervisor would help you through that, but you'd probably have to pay for external
Externally.
supervision.
Okay, perfect. In both, could you do that for the BCBA too, or?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, if it depends where you are with your masters. Remember, you've only got until
Yes.
the January. You know what I mean? I strongly encourage anyone who is able to do that, like by the time frame to do it, because it is an international credential. You won't lose it if you gain it now, as long as you keep up the expectations of that credential. So it's available if you can make it. Make it. Even if that means doing, the intensive pathway, which means you do less experience hours, but you're going to have to do more supervision to be able to get to that. Then I would recommend you give that a go.
Okay.
And if you're considering both, no worries. And if you're considering both, the BCBA should be able to it can supervise you for your CBA hours as well. So it's not like the double up would be quite natural. And just look on the BCBA website. You can find BCBAs in Australia. Again, a few years ago, a lot of people were doing overseas BCBA supervision and chatting with Americans early in the morning or late at night. There's lots of BCBAs here now. And some departments of ed have those as well. So they might actually really know the education setting even as well. You can look at people's areas. Absolutely.
There's plenty of great BCBA supervisors in Australia now.
And I'll try to unmute you now, Laura. You can allow the mic. You'll just have to unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for those like entry-level roles, do they tend to advertise as like core practitioner, or is it more like entry-level behavior support practitioner or like level 1, or is it more dependent on the company, or what's usually like, how would you know if something's sort of entry level?
It's such a great question, and unfortunately it's just a dog's breakfast. Everyone calls it something different, and you know what I mean? Like, so I think anything that looks like it's either says entry level, level 1, and then read through the description. If they're saying that you must have your practitioner number, that's not a level 1. They're expecting that you've already worked somewhere else and you've done that. That there's no, unfortunately, there's no consistency in what people describe that in.
Yeah, because there's PBS like relatively, it's sort of like still emerging, like in Australia, or like how long has that been sort of going on for?
PBS in Australia?
Yeah.
It has been, I've worked in disabilities for probably 30 years. And so before the NDIS, every state still had positive behaviour support, but it was government run. So each government disability department had a couple of practitioners they would employ, usually psychologists back then, and then they would, go out and provide some level of behaviour support, usually around intellectual disability, a bit similar to the UK model that they still have now. That's still really focused on intellectual disability. And then the NDIS has landed, what about, 8 or 9 years ago now, 2013, or more than that. 2013 was when they were doing their trials. And then since then, it's then become, a role. And then that kind of has exploded. And, we were, we supported the Australian Bureau of Statistics to put behaviour support practitioner as an listed occupation. So we done some work with them to do that. It was never a listed occupation before. So now it is. So there's lots of really cool things that are happening in the industry, but it's definitely a strong career space. If you can get yourself in there and get a good company to support you, you'll have a really good positive career, and it is the most amazing job. Like, it really is. I know, we sound biased. Of course we are, but it's super cool. It's just so cool. It's such a great job.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been really good tonight.
Lovely.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Laura. And Molly, you have some exciting news there. Seems like you're, well on the right pathway, and doing the concentrated hours, which is hard, but I think that's the secret now as we race towards the BCBA
Great.
leaving.
Yeah.
See a question above as well around getting BCBA supervision, from, I think that's Krista there. If people aren't responding, the BCBA website, I think you can tick if you're want to be a supervisor, so try to pay attention to those people. I would also search companies who offer BCBA supervision. I think there's a few out there now who offer even PBS supervision, but if they're BCBAs, I'm sure they'd be open to that, where actually their whole business model is that as well.
But you can search, go to the BACB website and search that. You can search for people that are, if you want someone in your state, or, like Rachel said, if you want someone that's got a teaching background, or, look for people like that. Connect with BCBAs on LinkedIn, message them, harass them. We love it.
It's
nice.
Like, people should be excited to teach you. For some of those questions as well around setting and stuff and hours, there's all these rules around restricted, non-restricted. Your supervisor should be able to answer your specific ones around here's what your job looks like, this you can count as experience, this you can't. There's lots of resources. I did mine a little while ago, so it's a little bit not fresh on my mind, but your supervisor should be able to work through that with you. I've also seen a question above. I just want to make sure we didn't miss it, around being an international student and your hours limited on what you can work. I personally think there's some risks in like that whole freelance space. There's a lot of workers' rights here. You shouldn't be working for free. And there's a lot of risks. Like even if you look at the ethics codes, there's whole sections around service agreements and payment and things like that. And that's for a reason. There's a lot of risk. You can't just be out there doing therapy and not be supported. What that means for your concentrated hours with BCBA is a bit complicated. That might just be worth chatting through if you identify a supervisor for the setting you're working in. And it's hard. I wish the BCBA wasn't leaving. Like, I wish that was the answer and you had all the time to do it slowly. So that's hard.
And to do your experience hours too, remember, part of that is you either have to have a BCBA supervisor, say BCBA, it's just easier for my brain, BCBA supervisor to actually, see your work, like do work with you, or you're going to have to upload videos and stuff. And if you're doing things for free and then the privacy, like, it just gets really messy, please, don't be tempted to do that. You're far better off being a support worker, getting some experience in disabilities and around PBS and, in that space, and just getting to know people, build your networks. Networks are a really good way to get a job, to get your foot in the door, start building your network, connect with people on LinkedIn, start having conversations, attend training, conferences, get to know people in the space. It's a small world. We all know each other. There's still not that many of us in Australia, so it's a tight kind of a community, but kind of put yourself out there and ask questions, introduce yourself.
And then a question there on like RBT and such. So what I think is kind of tricky in that space is RBT falls under the BACB registration as well. So it is that international North American registration that the BACB is leaving Australia in, like we said, 18 months. So it's not recognized here as much, especially at that RBT level. Often people encourage that training and things. And it can be great if that's something you want to do for you, but it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement of the role. The ABAA organization has something I think they call affiliate member, which is a silly title in my mind, but that's what they call it for similar thing. You have RBT experience of 40 hours, but just where they're at in the journey with self-regulation and things, it's not widely recognized or enforced in that way. So yes, in short there, you probably could be a junior therapist or therapy assistant or whatever. without that.
The other option is too that within PBS under the NDIS there is another. It's almost like a therapy assistant. I can't remember the line item, but it's like a therapy assistant. There are some companies that employ kind of therapy assistants, and so you don't have to have any particular qualification and stuff for that. You just have to have a company that is willing to give you a go and do some of those, some of that work. And at least that will kind of orient yourself into a company and kind of give you a feel of some of the work. And then you might decide whether you want to kind of, go ahead or not. And it might kind of give you another pathway to get into your, doing your experience hours down the track, or be registered PBS practitioner if they think, hey, Mary's amazing, know.
Beautiful. Any other last minute questions? I'll try to wrap us up. So thank you guys all for staying on this long as well.
It's
I'm
been
quite honored you guys
lovely.
are
Thank
listening
you
to us.
It's so great. Like, we really appreciate you taking the time. Like, everyone is so busy. I'm sure you're, running around with dogs and kids and dinners and everything. So really appreciate it.
Lovely.
Okay, guys, good luck. All the best.
Best of luck out there. We will see you all around.
Yeah.
Thanks,
see
everyone.
you all again, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Assignment deadlines, yes, they are.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
We're in marking mode, so yes, we're aware of that. Take care of yourselves.
Best of luck,
see you guys.
everyone. We'll chat later. Bye.
Meet you all online.
All right, I'm gonna hit end. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.